and how does it guard against those errors?
So, probably the best, simplest definition of manhood that I've ever heard came from author Robert Lewis. He wrote a series of books called The Men's Fraternity and other books toward men. Um, Stepping Up is a series of books, and he spends a lot of time, or a series of um, videos. And he wrote a book. Spends a lot of time with prisoners who are working through this, talking about many of the things that you just talked about. He defines manhood very simply as this: authentic manhood is what? Real men, that's how he says it, real men reject passivity, accept responsibility, and lead courageously.
Hmm.
Now, again, we could spend hours breaking down what it is to be a biblical man, but I love that definition because it hits it all. What do real men do? Real men reject passivity, so we could start there. They see that there are problems, they understand that there are needs, and instead of laying on the ground and cursing the people that step over them, or saying, well, my wife will take care of that, or someone else is doing that, or they're not doing very well, but it's getting done, real men reject passivity. So this passive life of I'd rather sit on the couch and play video games or immerse myself in hobbies, and I'm not against video games or hobbies, and they're the right place, but men who immerse themselves in that, they continue to act like children. They reject that. They say, look, I'm not going to live a passive life.
Right.
Well, the next step then is accepting responsibility. Men have such a hard time accepting responsibility. I would argue that manhood is not tied to an event, to an activity, to an age. You can be a boy in your 60s and 70s, and you can be a man in your teens if you accept responsibility. Accept responsibility for yourself, accept responsibility for the opportunities that God has given to you, the skills that he has placed in your hands to steward over, accept responsibility for the things that you have done wrong and the things that God is leading you to do. When you reject passivity, I'm not going to sit here and be passive. I am then going to accept the responsibility that I've been given, and then that is going to cause me to lead courageously. That is, courageously in the face of opposition, in the face of those who would say this is not right or it's unpopular. I'm going to, since I've rejected passivity, I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to accept responsibility. I'm going to lead because leadership needs to be done. And when we see that as a very simple definition of biblical masculinity, it guards against these ideas of toxic masculinity. And again, let's break that down. Toxic masculinity gets thrown around so much now. It can mean a guy being a guy, right? I think that men and women are wired different. I think we have different desires. I think that men typically like to spend time hunting and fishing and doing the things that we traditionally would say men do. And that's okay, but that doesn't make you a man. It makes you
Right.
male, perhaps. And it means that you're wired like a male, that God wired you that way. And there are reasons for that. But that doesn't make you more or less a man. A man is someone who rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, and leads courageously. And maybe you also do those other things. But if you are doing those first three things, you're not going to abuse your wife. You're not going to use people for your own personal gain. You're not going to do things that are contrary to the Bible because you have been one who stood up and accepted responsibility to lead courageously. It fights against the idea of the toxic part of toxic masculinity. Not all masculinity, not all maleness is toxic, but toxic masculinity is hurting people, abusing people, using people, doing what you do simply to fulfill your own fleshly desires and your own lusts. That's toxic. And understanding what God has created us to do as men, it defends against that because you can't be both. You can't be the man God created you to be and be someone who uses and abuses other people. You can't. The two don't work together.